Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. I want to start just by saying I think some of the frustration you're going to hear, we could go back and forth on whether or not licensing is in fact allowing flow of resources. There's an underlying frustration with I think with the Obama administration and the Biden administration on money that has indisputably gone to Iran and in connection with the JCPOA. We're very frustrated by that because we see them as a malign actor that's making the world less safe and certainly destabilizing Middle East. So I admire your poise, although I may disagree with a few of your answers. I'm not going to go down that path. I want to talk more broadly in the classified briefing. I mentioned that we wanted to get a punch list of things that we could work on around illicit finance, and particularly using digital assets to move money around. You provided a document to us, and at least a couple of provisions have been instructed in a discussion draft that we put out this week called the Enforce Act that I'd like to get with the department and see if we can address any concerns that you have. For my colleagues, what we're trying to do is provide something that I believe that can be implemented that is also instructed by the reality of a distributed ledger. I believe some of the Know Your Customer, the BSA, AML reporting provisions that even the department are considering do not work in a distributed ledger environment. And so what we're trying to do is propose something that we believe is a good tool and that will not regulate us out of being a viable player in the digital asset or crypto space. The thing that we have to recognize here, I hear it all the time with some of my friends on the other side of the aisle that want more regulations for traditional bankers. At some point, we make the United States less attractive for certain enterprises to be based, and crypto is probably, and digital assets generally, are likely one of the most mobile enterprises that can simply go somewhere else if our reporting requirements become too burdensome. So we need a light, lean regimen, I think, to make this work. Now, to the crypto folks, some of them in the Enforce Act, and I would like to get your read on it, I think that it's a good first step. And hopefully we will be able to get Senator Haggerty co-introduce the discussion draft with me this week. We can at least have that as a first step. The one thing I would tell people in the crypto or digital asset space that's saying, nothing to see here, everything's fine, they're wrong. There needs to be some light regulatory regimen put into place. Otherwise, there are risks. Think FTX, think a lot of other issues out there that we want to adjust for. We want to create the most hospitable environment for digital assets to thrive. We don't want to overreach and lose the opportunity to be that jurisdiction. And so, do you acknowledge the inherent problems with trying to imply the old sort of banking construct of BSA, AML, and Know Your Customer to a distributed ledger, digital assets?
So, Senator, I do think that, to your point, we have to take a differentiated approach depending on the type of tool. And that's why we would use this, even under our proposal, in a risk-based manner. And to your point of trying to make the United States jurisdiction that is able to win, even in this space, I think one of the proposals we have in our proposal is giving us the ability.
How do you calculate the risk base? So that's a way of saying I'm going to put my foot on the accelerator or not based on someone in Treasury's assessment of the risk a given entity represents. Is that what you're suggesting? How does that give me any certainty? If I'm in this space, because it seems like to me that could differ from an administration that listens to Thom Tillis on financial regulations versus an administration that listens to Elizabeth Warren on financial regulations. She's a friend and colleague of mine. We have differences in terms of the role government should play or just how far down they should go. So it sounds like to me that could ebb and flow and not necessarily provide certainty that provides the sort of fertile ground for us being able to define the gold standard of digital assets and crypto regulations.
So, Senator, the one thing that I think we've all seen is that as the crypto ecosystem evolves, and it evolves quickly, we're going to need to think about the regulatory approach as that evolution takes place. The goal here is to use the regulatory process to do this, and one of the things that the regulatory process provides to these companies is a bit of certainty, because there's a notice and comment piece of this where those companies have the ability to provide feedback, and that once those rules are in place, what we found.
What kind of time frame? My time's up. I don't want to go too far over. I did have a closing comment for you, Mr. Chair, if I may, but what kind of time frame are we talking about through notice and comment before you promulgate a rule?
So, Senator, it all depends on how complicated the
roughly
rule is, but it could be as quickly as a year before you have you go through a.
Yep. So I guess the question that I have, we've got an election coming up. There may be a change of administration. If there is a change of administration, there will be a vastly different view about how you go and regulate in this space. And so I, for one, would like to look at the possibility of working with your office to address some of the things in your punch list that we agree with, so that we may be able to get regulations on the books in this Congress that will certainly not go as far as some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to go, but far short of the wild, wild west that we find ourselves in now.
I look forward to working with you on that.
And Mr. Chair, the only other thing I was going to suggest, I know that we're talking about maybe this being illicit finance and terrorism, but Senator Warren and I have talked about the broader issue. Cartels now, it's passé to launder the old way. Cartels use digital and crypto platforms to launder at scale, and by scale, I mean in the billions. I think it'd be very helpful. I got a briefing about a year and a half ago from DEA. I mentioned this to Senator Warren before. I think it'd be very helpful to have a joint classified briefing, to have Treasury and DEA in the room, and see how we can, if we get right here and we implement a good regulatory regimen, we're going to put cartels, transnational criminal organizations, and terrorist organizations in a much more difficult position to move cash around, because now they're doing it really without any obstacles whatsoever.
Thank you.